inflationary increases. So it would be great, even if they just gave us a holiday on that, because they have a $1.8 billion excess right now, and gave us the actual calculated inflationary increase for this one biennium or even just 1 year would really help districts out, because this 7 and 8% inflation we're dealing with right now.
When I was 22, I got involved with the Russian mafia.
We're gonna have to try and make that up.
Here's how it happened.
From the legislature.
Yeah, so I'm gonna start short.
So you can see there's a significant increase in the transportation. I'm going to just kind of go over the increases. That's due to, we had to put the stop arm cameras on. That was an increase. And then the fuel protection is, that was a significant increase as well. So, and then just the raise in transportation costs across the board.
The costs were actually not for the cameras. First Student was able to do the cameras for us for almost nothing, because they were able to get some from another state that they weren't able to use, and they were able to use our current DVR system that we have. The cost for the buses was actually the extended stop arms we had to add, and that was $40,000, somewhere in that range. And then we have budgeted, we'll talk about it a little bit later, but we've budgeted an extra $80,000 for fuel costs potentially in transportation. So the overall increase in mills that you'll see this year is really reflective of that rainy day fund for the possible continuation of cost of diesel, to be honest with you.
You can see some of the reappropriations. When you see in the center column, there's reappropriations. I do want to point out one other thing. I was able to get the reserves, the general fund reserves. We dipped a little bit last year. We had to use some, but I got those back up to our regular levels. And those are, I can only do that when we have the excess taxes coming in, local taxes. It can only be prior year taxes that I can use for this. It's a prior year tax that I can book and put into these reserves, this excess reserves. Our reserves are at 100%. We can keep 20% or 10% of our general fund in reserves, but then we can have an excess, but that's prior year taxes that haven't been collected, that were collected, and it's over. Like I'm going clear back to 19, we're still collecting some of those taxes. And so when those come in, I try to keep those not spent, but keep that in this excess reserves for a time when we won't have full taxes and collections. Maybe it goes down to 80%. We're going to be using that excess reserves at that point. Okay. And then reappropriations, you can see I was only able to reappropriate $41,000 back to the transportation fund. That's any cash left over after our reserves. I try to always keep that. You can see a significant reappropriations in years past. Last year, we weren't able to send any back, but this year we were. I want to keep that trend going just a little bit, have that little bit of extra in case we need to add a bus or something like that. Then tuition, I was able to reappropriate $49,000 and there's no reserves allowed. Retirement, I was only able to reappropriate $45,000 back to that fund. And that means that's a lesser burden on the taxpayers again. That is due, that lesser amount there is due, we had some significant retirements. People, some of our teachers, long-term teachers that were here had their leave was banked. And so we pay that out. And then if they, we've agreed with TRS that if they sign option 1, that we match what they are able to put into their retirement at the end and using their sick leave. And so that gets a little pricey. I do budget for that, but I didn't budget quite enough. And so that's why that reappropriation is just a little bit short. Well, quite a bit short, actually. Adult education, you can see it's pretty consistent of what I get to reappropriate back. It just depends on what we spend. I expect, and now that COVID's kind of subsided and maybe we can get this program a little bit more robust, then I expect that we will be spending more out of the adult education fund so that we can offer more to our community members. Technology, I was reappropriation. Now this is technology is a little different. Technology, you don't get a budget per se from the state. You get some funding, but we have a $75,000 a year a levy that funds that. You save that money, then we get a little bit of money from the state. Varies how much we get, so you keep building that up. And so we had 100,238 left in cash at the end of the school year in the technology fund. And so that's your building bridge for this budget coming up, that $100,000. And we're gonna get that $75,000 tax assessment. And then we're also gonna get a little bit of money for this from the state for technology. Okay, so you'll see that when we go through here a little bit more, but that's where all these numbers kind of come from, where you're kind of just building this budget as you go. Flexibility fund is much the same, although we do get some transformational learning grant money. That flexibility is where if there was, I remember back in June, when I asked to have the permission if there's any funding left over to put it into the flex fund. Flex fund is actually flexible. I mean, you get to use it wherever your need is. And so that would have helped in some of our budget areas to not use ESSER funds had we had some, but it just doesn't get funded by the state anymore. Other than transformational learning, they throw in that. But that's very dedicated in what you get to use it for.
Do we have any money?
Pardon me?
Did we get that back yet? Did we know? Do we know?
Yes, we get transformational learning grant, yes.
No, for the money that you asked permission for to put in the flexible.
There was nothing.
There was nothing.
Nothing. No, I wanted to keep mills down. And so anything that was left over, I reappropriated back for those funds.
Okay.
Let's say if I'd have had some more money in transportation, I could have used that. I could have put that into flex fund. But I didn't, we were already 10 mills over.
Okay.
I want to protect the taxpayers first. That's really my first goal, I guess.
And one of the advantages of the flex fund is it's not a fund that has to be spent out every year. So it's where we can carry money over from year to year. So it's almost like an extra set of reserves as well. to come back into our
We used to spend, that's what we used to pay our paras out of, was out of the flex fund. We had, because we did get some state funding and we were able to use some of our year-end monies to put into flex fund. But we decided that wasn't really a very good strategy. And so we moved those back, those salaries back in the general fund. So we could get a better picture of what that's costing us and that we could stay within budget, not kind of count on our little flexibility fund. So we trying to change that thinking. Our bond debt, you can see this went down about 10 mils. So that's kind of nice. I was able to reappropriate some more money for that.
So if you take a look there at 1819, we're at 183. This is to pay the bonds on the middle school and the high school. We were at 183, 180, 168. And then we had that dip in our taxable value last year. So that went up. We had to levy more taxes to pay that. But now with that levy coming back down, or with the taxable value coming back up a little bit and the reappropriation, we're still seeing that downward trend overall in the cost for individual taxpayers for the high school and middle school.
Building reserve, you can see that I'm asking that this year that we have a permissive levy that we can ask for, and there's a little calculation. If you spend so much, if you ask your taxpayers for so much money, then the state kicks in. So at a maximum of $110,000, that we get the best bang for our buck there. We get $89,000 from the state if we assess our local taxpayers at $100,000, $110,000. I kind of fiddled with that a little bit. Last year it was $100,000. But this year, it made more sense, especially with our boilers that we have to replace. Those types of things to keep this fund healthy, then I'm asking that we are able to assess the taxpayers $110,000 in that fund, in that permissive levy. And so that's why you'll see a little bit of increase there. And then the total overall, all funds, the total mill increase would be 2.72 mils from last year.
So if you remember last year, in order to keep the levy funds the same, we played a little bit with that building reserve, is what Lori's talking about. And what we decided, we thought this year, because it's our last year of the $75,000 building reserve coming from the voters, that 10-year, that we thought it would be best, most prudent to maximize what we receive from the state on that, maximize the funding that comes from the state on that. So
Thank you for explaining that better.
we could play with that and keep the mills equal. But we thought that wasn't the prudent. We thought it was more prudent to maximize the state funding. And
But
those three
overall-
mills that, or the 2.7, that it does go up, that really, if you look at our mill levy, that equals to about $70,000. So like Lori and I said earlier, it's really what any increase that we're seeing in our taxes is really a security blanket due to possible increases back again. You know, right now, gas prices and primarily diesel for our buses is going down. But, you know, if we had made that assumption last year in August, which I guess we kind of did, it really did. So the idea is we want to be prudent with our budgeting to make sure that we have that rainy day fund there if diesel prices go back up. If not, we'll be sitting here next year saying, hey, we're going to be able to reappropriate this money back in and give some tax relief to be able to shift in some of the other areas. So that's the increase we're looking at.
Thanks. So the next part is really just your formal budget report that is submitted to the state. Just kind of puts it in each fund. And then I give you a lot of information of where the general fund budget comes from, how those pieces are all put into that general fund. I give you all the salary worksheets. The only thing I don't give you is the health insurance worksheets, because that has personal information of what plans that each employee takes. But that's the only piece that you really don't get. Other than that, that's the information where we get. Okay. That gives you the general fund. Then I go on to the transportation fund, and you can see those increases, where those increases are coming from. And then our rate sheets from First Student, the money that we, based on our routes that we should be getting from the state and county transportation part. Tuition budget, this just breaks it down. Again, you can see the increases and it's kind of cut off. But the final year of tuition for school district 2 for high school students, that's down. The reason this budget increased is because we have a number of students out at the Boys and Girls Ranch, and we have to pay that tuition. That comes out of this fund. We also have our ABA rooms, so those salaries are funded from there. So we would have more kids out at the ranch. They don't get quite the opportunity that we want them to. And then we think we can do a better job here with those kids.
The other thing that goes along with the Yellowstone Academy on that is right now there's so much demand for that type of mental health. Like they have a waiting list. In the past, we've been able to kind of call them on some of the summer school stuff that they want to do with the kids. To have an extended school year under special education, you have to show that that child is in danger of regressing over the summer, like they showed a pattern where they've lost academic ability over the summer. And we've been able to kind of push back on that a little bit sometimes. But right now, due to the concerns about just losing spots in terms of having kids be able to be at the ranch, we kind of acquiesced to their recommendations on those type of things. So
The other thing I want to point out in this tuition fund is normally you pay tuition in arrears. Like we would, when we started paying school district 2 for our high school students to go, we could have waited another year to pay for those. And I said, Tobin and I said, no, let's just pay for it up front, get this assessment out of the way. And so our taxpayers can see the real benefit of getting that paid for and out of the way sooner as we go. And so we were able to do that. And so being only 18,000 this next year, 19,000, then that's the last year. This year would be it. Otherwise it would be pushed off another year. We'd still have to assess our taxpayers. So I'm quite proud of that one.
These are always last year's kids at the ranch, and this year we've got 5 kids have left now. So next year it'll look better because those were high school kids and 4 graduates, so it's not like they'll come back. And we'll just move that. So it should look better next year. We went from having 9 to 4. So I'm hoping to stay at that level, because that helps a lot.
And I do.
Well, it's already put together on campus.
I hope so.
And I do have to give Dawn a lot of credit because when you're looking at those bills for those kids go in and out of that facility quite often. And Dawn's really good about making sure that we have attendance records on that, where those kids are there when we're paying for them. So he's really good about that. And Deanne helps with this high school tuition. I can't tell you the money that she saved by saying, oh no, those kids live in Billings. So we've had some great success working with that tuition fund, keeping that as low as we possibly can. Retirement fund, you're going to see a significant increase in the retirement fund, and that pays for the Medicare, Social Security, unemployment, TRS, and para that's required by the state. And then also we just because we've added staff. And then also remember when I was talking about the retirements that kind of dropped that fund quite low and I didn't get to reappropriate quite enough. That's why I'm bumping that up to get that back up so that we can, because I expect that we have some more retirements coming up as well. I want to be prepared for that. That's a permissive levy. That is, it's just what transportation and retirement are permissive levies. And so that it's just what you need is what they assess countywide. Okay. Adult education budget, I upped this just a little bit. We did see the increase in some fees collected, and I expect this program to take off this year. Technology budget, this is where I told you we had that $100,000 beginning cash, and you can see that at the end of the sheet. We also have the $75,000 levy, and then we're going to get a $10,000 state entitlement for technology. And then I have to also anticipate that we're going to have about $500 in interest earned in this account. And so that brings that's how you get your total budget for the year. Okay, then you just spread it out over what we think we might need. We don't try to pay any salaries out of this, just to save it for technology, just for equipment. Flexibility fund, again, you start with your cash ending balance from last year. We have some Montana Advanced Opportunities grant, and that's used for CTE classroom fees. And I'm anticipating we earn some interest of $678. We get the transformational learning grant. There's a little bit of carryover from last year. We didn't use it all. And then the amount that we get this year. So this fund is quite robust. But again, some of it is already spoken for with the transformational learning grant. The big bulk of it is transformational learning grant. And that's those requirements of what you can spend it on are pretty limited. Then we just come to our debt service fund. This is paying our bond payments. And I give you the schedule that's left, which is pretty fun. We're getting down there on that middle school bond. And then the building reserve budget, again, you use your cash ending balance from those balance sheets from your trustees report.
Going back to your flexibility fund, you said that you're limited on what you can use that for, or?
The transformational learning grant part.
Okay.
Mhm. Grant me, or maybe you could speak to what you can use that for, Don.
It has to be things that promote learning. It's not your typical funding, so if a student has a great idea for a project and it might not be the way the teacher is delivering instruction or how to respect them, learning the class, fund those. We chose to use it to benefit more of the full teacher population, and then we'll move out. There's another funding coming, and I'll get the information on that probably towards the end of this year. And we'll replace the transformation. This is more for thinking outside the box, different ideas, bringing teachers on, how to allow students to be more independent learners, those kinds of things. It's not something we can just go by textbooks with or take a field trip with. It's pretty specific. But we've done pretty well with the expectation. In fact, we have a 10 or 15-minute video that was presented to the legislature last year. They came here and then worked with Cole Hill and then with myself and talked about what we've done, and that was presented to the legislature to promote the funding to continue this on for the next round. So we've been pretty good with it.
Then building reserve, again, start with cash balance, estimated interest. I don't estimate any there much. You get the state major maintenance aid. When we assess $110,000 for the security, for the permissive levy, we get that 89,000, 90,000 back from the state. And then the annual levy that they pass is the last year of the 75,000. So that's what makes up our budget in the building reserve. Again, thank you, trustees. Your endless hours, endless meetings, always working for our staff and our students and our community, and the support that you give all of us, and we appreciate it. So that's it. Any questions? That's just tons of information, and it's real dry, and I apologize. And I get really excited when I get to give this to you, but just me and my nerdiness.
Not for you. Are we sending freshmen to Kalispell?
No. That's only our varsity teams. So
Okay.
when we travel overnight, it's not a sub varsity and a varsity, it's just varsity. They do
Because the way you explained it before, you said you had freshmen going up there. I was like, whoa, why are we sending freshmen to Libby?
Yeah, no, not on an overnight trip. I mean, they may go, they're gonna go to like
If they're freshmen, but they get varsity rank.
varsity, but like they'll travel to basketball wise, freshman JV and varsity, they'll travel, but it's not an overnight trip.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we only had two teams. So when we just had, say, a varsity, a freshman, or a varsity and a JV, we were able to send both the boys and girls basketball in the same bus. But now, as both teams have freshman, JV, and varsity, there'll have to be a boys bus and a girls bus. So I think we're-
It'll be 30 plus a team, plus coaches, and the bus only seats 56, so a big bus seats 56.
Plus trainers, managers, everything else.
And coaches. So yeah, so now you're sitting, you have to have two buses.
Now you're sending 70 per team.
Yeah.
The one final thing that I would like to remind the board of in the budget is we have a huge funding cliff with ESSER funds. When those go away, we need to really practice sustainability. And we really need to work hard on I'm super conservative fiscally. I save, I like to save, I like to have some backup when we need it, because we all know things can happen. So I'm just asking that we really tighten as much as we can so that when this funding cliff happens, we're not surprised, and we're not using all of our reserves, and we're not using all of our excess reserves in our general fund. But just be very cognizant of those. Staff's going to have to be, it's going to be a real change for us, I believe, in spending and budgeting and things like that. So just a forewarning, and to keep that in mind.
Starts to reflect that possibility or that inevitability.
So that's the end of my presentation. So thank you again.
Thank you. And the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Persons present who wishes to address the board or raise any questions about public school district matters or governing policy may do so under public participation. No discussion of personnel or individual students is permitted at this time. A limit of 3 minutes is placed on each speaker. Persons who want more time may make arrangements to be placed on a future agenda. As a courtesy, all cell phones should be turned off. The public is also reminded that they may provide input on all motions being considered by the board at this meeting. And I'd just like to thank each and every one of you for taking your family time and making a commitment to this meeting. Yes, and for the kids. Appreciate you being here for all your help. So, any public comments? Okay. Mrs. Sewell, let's give your some support.
So hopefully you had a chance to look through this. Are there any questions before I begin? Just wanted to pass along kudos to the administrators and to Mrs. Berlucci and Mrs. Wolf, or Miss Wolf. Who's married to them. For all the work in the planning and the preparation, and then hopefully you'll get a chance to see, if you haven't already, the impact that both of those branches of summer school hopefully did for our students. You'll notice that we did the academic as well as the enrichment thread, where previously we had done the academics only. So pretty exciting, a lot of work. We were often overstaffed, but we needed to be, because there's the under, trying to keep the ratio down, and also not knowing for sure what would be the community's response to that enrichment offering, which I think was enthusiastic. Hopefully you got a chance to look at some of the quotes on the last slide. That's where we get the data.
Chill.
I love that one. That's why that one went in there for sure. The teachers are chill. I loved it. Biggest highlight. So this is the qualitative data, because we did not pre-test or post-test in an academic way. The data that we used to place students in the academic summer school was based on our principals looking at their spring data with teacher input, and so that's too far away from the start of the summer school, and we did not have a plan for a full post-test. So our data we relied upon was attendance and with this qualitative data. Any questions?
Successful to be able to do 133 credit.
Wasn't that stellar? You know, our high school staff worked really, really, really hard. We asked many things of them when we, it's easy to sign up to do this as a teacher. And I say that carefully. It's easy to sign up because we are giving up some summer hours to that, compensated summer hours. But the thing that we asked of our high school staff was, please call when you notice a kid was here yesterday and not here today, or you haven't seen them, or you're not seeing progress, making gains in some of those courses that they were enrolled in. And our high school staff did a stellar job of answering that call. They called, they emailed. I did a lot of emails to parents in with the student and had some great success with that. And I do not think we could have gotten 133 courses completed. Our goal, of course, is to not have that many to complete. So what I don't have for information that I was thinking would have been helpful for you, happy to do so, is to count how many we could have recovered had we had 100% recovery. How many courses do we need to recover versus the 133? But I feel like just peaking it last year, we had an improvement. Gordon, would you be able to support that this 133?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So
Goes a long ways towards our 100% graduation goal.
it does. We couldn't. We have some kids in that situation there that would not. The hole would have been too grave. It's an interesting way to say that. Had they not been here, been involved, been encouraged to recoup those courses. So with that, then we have some kids in a different position that are wanting to graduate this spring that likely can, if we keep them, on the right path. If they're not attending summer school, it would have been for some impossible to recover. So, yeah.
Do you know how many credits were needed to be recovered
Yeah, that's the information that is lacking. That would, if I could have told you, and I can certainly gather that for you, it was hindsight after I looked at the slide and said that would have been important to know, like, we recovered 133 out of how many we were trying to recover. You do not have that information. I'm happy to get that to you and Toby can forward that out.
Do you know offhand about what
I
it
don't,
was?
it would be
Okay.
just a wild
Just
guess.
wondering.
Well, I guess I could say, we still had, I think 86 F still, but some of those are not, I guess I would say maybe they aren't recoverable because they can't be duplicated on.
Like
So,
ceramics.
Yeah, there's some things that you can't redo on an online class, so most, we required or we recovered, I would say we probably closer to 60 to 70% of what could be recovered.
Well, good job, you guys.
Yep, good job.
Thank you, Gwen.
Thank you.
Okay, so now on the facilities report, Mark.
Questions?
Mark loves this.
Down to the wire. Is there any big outstanding projects?
Kindergarten playground.
How's the job hunt going?
Hired one this month.
We did? So we're only short 3? 13. I don't know.
The impressive list is like, not done. Very impressive. All right.
So I'll just highlight a few things. Take a look there at our enrollments. That's actually gone up since I put this together over the weekend. Pam and I at the coffee and conversation today, we talked a little bit and we looked at, we have a very large 7th grade class and a very large sophomore class. So we looked at in 2 years when our sophomore class is seniors, what our enrollment would be. As of today, no additional move-ins, none of these subdivisions or housing projects that we keep hearing about. We're looking at 620 kids in this high school in 2 years. We also pulled up the latest MHSA numbers at that time, and the largest Class A in this district, the largest Class A high school in the spring of 2021 was Columbia Falls with 620 students. Laurel was second largest with 618. So, we had Jeff here last week talking a little bit about the projections that we did when we designed and built this building, and the growth that's gone on at Lockwood, the demand to be at our school, people wanting to be here, and some of the migration patterns that were driven by the pandemic. We're going to be close to that 700 limit way sooner than I ever expected it to be. So just a heads up on that. New teachers were here yesterday, today, and they'll be here the next couple days. We have a great young group of new staff. They've been doing curriculum work and some classroom management work. I gave them kind of the overall district philosophy stuff yesterday morning. Of course, we still have a large group in the secondary because this is our last large year of hiring at the high school. But seems like a very good group, been very positive, been impressed with them. Last week, we were at the PLC at Work conference in Minneapolis. Excellent. I think that the principals and the teachers that were able to go there have got some real clear directions that they want to go moving forward. One of the highlights I thought was we had a work session because we had so many people there. We had a facilitated work session where we could do some brainstorming with one of their PLC experts. He was actually one of the keynote speakers. His name is Eric Twaddell. Eric is actually the superintendent at Lincolnshire, just in the suburbs of Chicago. It's actually where I was able to go to my first PLC conference, when I first started as a principal over 20 years ago. We got to do a lot of work with Eric. It's a high school only district. They're the most successful high school, like through the US News and World Report and those type of things in Illinois. And one of the great things is they've actually been a standards-based grading high school. and reporting for over 8 years at this point. And so myself and a couple of the teachers sat in, I think Dawn and Jenny were in there. We sat in on some of the work he did on standard-based grading and one of the speakers that he gave. But they actually, kind of like when we went to White River several years ago, when we first started the PLC process, they offer school visits. So I'm looking, and we're looking to look really hard at possibly sending a group of our high school administration and staff to go out there and visit their districts and be able to pick their brain and fast track some of the growing pains that we're having with it. Because they, like I said, they've had it in place for 7 years. They've gone through all the growing pains and those type of things. So Eric was amazing to work with, and I think that we're going to try and partner with them a little bit more. I'll share their district website. They have a whole section on grading and stuff, and tries to address those items that we hear questions like, how is this going to work when kids get to college? Do these grades count the same, and those type of things. And so they have a great series of videos and information on there that I sent it to Andrew today and said, how much of this can we rebrand with Lockwood instead of Ally Stevenson? So
Sorry, did you ask what software they use?
they use Infinite Campus. Is that right? For
Just correct. Yeah.
double check.
He's my new best friend.
So, very, very generous from Family Services. Dawn has done yeoman's work on this. They are donating a backpack filled with, they actually called us and got our supply lists for K through 5th grade. Every student in Lockwood schools will have a backpack with all the school supplies on it that we'll be able to distribute during open house. The only 2 exceptions are the earbuds and the PE shoes. And I had a teacher ask me, what if they don't have earbuds, or what if they don't have PE shoes? We will find a way to get those to them if they can't afford them or they don't have those through the Don Reed Fund or some of the other grants that Don's been able to do. Unbelievably generous. The early K does not have a supply list yet, but we will have some extra backpacks and we'll be able to pick and pull out some of those things. Don, you were talking about some of the supplies that they're providing for middle school and high school, not quite to the same level, but.
No, they're not doing that. We already have that.
Okay, that was through a different source.
Storm away, yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, they're also supplying a pallet of snacks for special education and a pallet of sanitary wipes for water to distribute across the campus with that 4 million we have stored from COVID, but it's okay. I said, bring them, we might use them. So yeah, they've been really good. So that'll be here tomorrow at 1.
If they dry out, you just put a little water in there. and it keeps
I think we have so many that if they dried out, we gave it.
I don't know if everybody saw, but last week, the CDC came out with updated guidance for schools with COVID, basically eliminating any of the quarantine and those type of things. I'm going to go through and try and find out a little bit more information about that and gather that for you guys through my sources. In September, we'll be addressing our return to school safety plan. So we've got some updates on that are part of what we've done with our policy updates, but we'll also have some updates on that based on the new CDC guidance on that. Anything else here to highlight? Mark and his maintenance crew, I joked about his favorite time of year, but they've done yeoman's work. We went through and we added a new counseling center for the middle school because we're adding the second counselor this year. We had people in last week painting the lines in the parking lots and those type of things. And then of course they're working still on kindergarten playground. So Mark just wanted, publicly to say thank you for all the work that you've done. I mean, it's been a lot, and obviously we know we're always shorthanded. Fall activities, and I don't know if Mike wants to maybe address the overall numbers. I shared we had over 200 kids that first day of practice on Friday. I don't know if that's gone up or gone down, probably stayed pretty close.
Pretty close between the ones that left and ones that came in.
And we do have 12 8th graders that tried out for the high school rosters. Majority of those are in soccer where we had smaller rosters, so it does help out with that. I know I don't know if it was Q2 or Color 8. One of the news stations I heard came out and did a little thing about us, our 8th graders participating in soccer.
I think it's going out tomorrow.
Okay. So our first interscholastic event of the year is high school golf tomorrow in Lewistown. And then next weekend, we have volleyball tip-off tournament. If anybody wants to volunteer to help out with volleyball on Friday and Saturdays, Mike is looking for volunteers. And then another item that we have coming up real soon, that'll be a good thing to host here, is we are hosting the district FFA convention the first week of September. So, and Gordon has a schedule worked out for that, I will. What's that?
What was that for?
FFA.
District FFA.
Yep.
So
LinkedIn, I got it.
we'll have lots of blue jackets walking around campus.
So the volleyball is the 19th and 20th?
Next Friday and Saturday.
Next Friday.
Well, not this coming week.
26th and 27th.
I'm a pretty good line judge.
Nice form.
Yeah.
Is that in or out?
I've got like 10, that's in.
I didn't know.
Yeah, I got 10 years.
Any questions on my report? Any follow-up, anything? Or
Any public comment? Yes,
What is the date of the FFA?
that's the first.
it's that first week of September. I think it's,
31st.
is it just one day or is it multiple?
It's a one day.
Okay. I thought-
Well, that list had, they're throughout the state on different days, but ours is just, I think it's just the 31st only.
31st of August.
No, yes, I believe it's the 31st.
31st of August.
Let me double check. Maybe it's the 30th.
Tobin, you sent out a thing, we lost a secondary teacher?
Yeah.
A new hire dropped.
What's that?
A new hire dropped.
Yeah, a new hire let us know late Thursday of last week that they were no longer going to accept the position. So,
Do we have a backup?
Mrs. Fox, you want to share your backup plan? She's been juggling a lot this week, so.
So, Kelly and I have hired a roving substitute who is also a certified librarian. So I asked my current librarian to move to second grade and take over that classroom with the help of a student teacher that I have coming for second grade. And then that roving substitute will be in the library until our student teacher is done student teaching, and hopefully she'll be ready to take over.
And our current elementary librarian is a very experienced.
Very experienced. She just has coaching experience. She has a curriculum, master's in curriculum.
And then our librarian that we're moving over to second grade, she will go back to the library.
Yeah.
Yes,
Okay.
I had to get creative. There's nobody out there.
What's the,
Student teacher is very lucky to have her as a mentor.
when's the student teacher done, I guess?
She's a double major, so it's 20 weeks. So it'll be right at the end of December, 2 weeks in January,
Okay.
first 2 weeks in January.
So probably semester.
Mhm, yeah. My librarian Christine is still going to manage the library and do all of that as well as teach second grade. So it was a big ask, and that's what teachers do when they know you value them, and they do that stuff for you when you ask. Thankful.
Are there any public comments on the safe return to schools? We'll move on to trustees back to school legal primer, MTSBA.
So I just put the link to that there. It's no cost. The in-person is September 6th, and there wasn't a listed site when I pulled it up. I don't know if that's changed. Oh, I started with my email. And then they're doing one in Helena, which is also being done virtually on the 20th of September, if you're interested. That's always a really good training to go to. And then I have the information there for MCEL in October as well too. If you're interested in actually attending MCEL in person, please let Lori know sooner rather than later so we can start looking at booking rooms and those type of things.
Please shoot me an email with that so I can keep it.
Probably will be going to this, I want to go with. That's one annual event that just isn't the same virtual as it is in person. The chance to meet other trustees from other school districts and interact with them and form some friendships and relationships is such an excellent part of the MSL that I found has been really a valuable thing for me. And so I will be attending in person for that one if anybody wants to ride up with and share a room or whatever.
Is that the September 7th?
It's
Or
October.
October 19th through the 21st.
And it's a long drive, but it's okay.
And we will have several administrators going there too because of their positions on the boards and those type of things. So we can, if you're worried about travel and driving, we can find a way for people to travel with that.
Well, we might even be able to take the black.
SUV. Yeah. So we're driving.
It's not, no snow room. Yeah, October there should be no snow.
Yeah.
Okay, we're going to, are there any comments on those things? All right, we're going to move on to the consent agenda. And at this point, part of that consent agenda is to approve some classified staff. And Michelle Keekover has agreed to come on staff at Lockwood Schools, and Scott will have to recuse himself, so I will need 2 motions so that Scott doesn't vote on that. And her employment based on a recusal, the law is that we have to approve her employment 100%.
Yeah.
It has to be in that.
And on the out of district students, just want to be clear, we have some grade levels we talked about earlier that are very large, and I guess someone would be on here would be the 10th grade class. This is a student that's currently in district and they're moving out, the family's moving out, and they wanted him to be able, they want that child to be able to stay enrolled here. So this student would not be adding to the current numbers that we have. He's a student that's already accounted for in our enrollments that I shared with you.
Question on the out of district, do we have any that are ending?
We probably have 20.
Okay, so we still have 20 that are pending
Waitlisted.
the initial
Yeah. To
process.
see where we're at with the goal. So
Yeah.
part of the problem is, so like in the middle school, it's really driven by our class sizes, history and science, those core classes. I just, a parent back today, that's 27 graders, they'd like to enroll, group, see my great kids, real super nice family. But we just can't take any more kids at this time because we're concerned about class sizes. History and science seem to drive that, especially in middle school. Math and language arts, a lot of times we have kids that are going into honors, we have some kids that are coming over to high school, start high school credits. We have kids that are pulled out for special needs, but typically everybody's enrolled in history and science. And so we have to watch those classes so we get close to that 30. So once we sort through and we actually see how many bodies show up on next Wednesday, a lot of other school districts, we don't get their request for records until later. Sometimes we don't get them until September. So we'll have to see where those numbers shake out. And if they do, then we consider that group of 20 to 25, depending on their levels in September.
So you're agreed on, is that the K through 5?
Yeah, you guys said that we could go ahead and bring some K through 5 in. So if you look, there's first, fifth, fourth, 3, but the senior class is obviously much smaller. So we went ahead and improved the senior. The 8th grade and the 7th graders or the 10th graders are students that have moved out.
That senior is actually a current student already, actually.
Okay, so-
Out as well, so I have no non-lawful people there.
So the seniors, so both the high school kids are kids that are already accounted for in our enrollment.
Right?
A procedural question on this. This is a consent agenda. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it's my understanding the consent agenda, Scott would have to recluse himself because we don't have a vote on this. Because it's just if there's no objections to the consent agenda, it's automatically. I've noted that all trustees are here and they voiced no objection. If Scott wants to recluse himself from all of this consent agenda.
I planned on getting a motion to hire Michelle separate from the consent agenda. Does that work too?
Yeah, we can pull her from the consent agenda.
Okay, so pull her from, I just want to make sure that my
I'm
notes,
just going to ask for a motion to hire Michelle Keekover.
Okay.
That we can vote on and then we'll approve the, if there's no issue with consent agenda. Then
Scott can go first.
Scott can vote on the consent. Well, we don't vote on the consent agenda. I
No,
don't hear any dissent
I just
and
said that.
it's approved. Okay, so could I have a motion to hire Michelle Keekover and then Clothing secretary.
Yeah, so she would be the secretary that comes in and covers the other 4 secretaries' lunch breaks.
I would hire a roving secretary.
I'll second that.
We have first by Sylvia to hire Michelle Pico as running secretary. Second by Buddy. Is there any discussion on this motion? Start recusing and stuff. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? That passes unanimously. Okay. Are there any objections to the consent agenda? Hearing none, we will consider those items approved. Okay, we just got through talking about the district budget. So based on this conversation, we need to approve the trustees' financial summary for last year and the adopted budget for the upcoming year. So any discussion on
Lori, do you want that in 2 separate motions?
Because of the way that, yeah, please.
So right now, we're looking for a motion for the, to approve the trustees' financial summary.
for last year?
for last year.
Can I get a motion?
I move to approve the trustees' financial summary for 2021-22.
Thank you, Sylvia. Thanks, Jamie. I have a first by Sylvia and a second by Jamie to approve the trustee financial summary for the 2021-22 school year. Is there any? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? And that motion passes unanimously. So now may I get a motion on adopting the budget that Lori presented to us this evening?
I move we approve the adopted budget for school year 2022-23.
So we have a first from Buddy and a second from Sylvia to adopt the budget that was presented to us this evening for the school year 2022-23.
Thank you.
Any conversation, comments?
I got a question.
Yes, Jamie.
On the budget in here. This highlighted part for the middle school, like that, like, I guess the middle part, it says, do we have a middle school athletic director?
Yeah, I split it because we have, that's where you have to report things by high school and middle school. And so that's a middle school. So I split his salary, Mike's salary.
Okay.
Yeah, I part of it is for middle school and part of it's coded for high school because he does both.
Okay, but if that's him, who's.
Yes, that's his salary. Mhm.
Okay.
Jamie, this year we are looking at, Mike, do you want to explain it? Just because now that we have all the sub-varsity sports and those type of things, we have some extra coaching stipends that we pull back based on numbers. We're looking at putting one of those stipends towards paying someone to help supervise some of those middle school events.
So what it is it's a stipend that will go towards a person that's basically in the hallways over there, helping with the FLIS with Mr. Goyette, helping with Dragonfly. It's just getting so big over here that we can barely control our 200 athletes that walk through the door here, and now we're gonna have another 200 athletes over there, and we just can't get to the buildings back and forth. I'm still doing all the scheduling, all the officials, everything else, but it's just a liaison between the admin and the coaches and the kids and promoting and letting them know what kind of sports we have and get them going over there, because I just can't get to both.
So
both
do
areas.
did that get like approved or is that like a?
No, we haven't done that.
An opening?
Not yet, yeah.
Oh, so is it budgeted for?
Yes,
Yeah.
it's just, there's a budget line item for it that we are not going to use, that there's not a high school or not a middle school coach there. So I'm going to use that stipend that we've already budgeted in there for that. So it's not like excess money. It's already budgeted for that.
Okay.
And it's just, truthfully, it's money well spent, trust me. I mean, it's just to be in the middle school and not have.
Well, cheaper than having you an assistant.
Well, yeah, I mean, it definitely is, it is, and I've got a job description, I went over it with him and everything else, and it's just that liaison between there, that I would say 99% of the Class A schools all have one. I'll just let you know that as well, too, so it's
Okay.
tough to get.
I guess I just didn't see it come across the board.
Yeah,
so-
that's it. I didn't, this is what I purchased.
Okay,
Yeah,
this is the, okay,
It hasn't, we haven't.
okay.
Thanks, Jamie. Any other questions? Comments? All those in favor of adopting the budget as presented for 2022-2023, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? And that passes unanimously. So now we need the approval of the draft board goals that we worked on July 26th. Probably to get those out just so quickly. Yeah, that's what-
Well, thank you guys for the work on that. I mean, that's, you guys heard me say this, that to me, that's the most important meeting we have every year. And so the changes on this really boil down to the second line right here under ensure all students will have the opportunity to learn what's expected of them. I just wanted to run this part by you guys as a board. We put in there effective standards-based instruction, grading, and reporting.
That was in last year's too.
No, what we had last year was a strong alignment between the intended and assessed curriculum.
Oh, yeah.
So Andrea and I thought, you guys wanted to talk about that, you guys wanted to stress that we are going to continue with the standards-based instruction, grading, and reporting. But when Andrea and I talked about it, we thought that was a little bit redundant with the strong alignment between intended and assessed. That strong alignment has to be in place if you're doing standards-based. So we thought we could remove that. That was something we hadn't necessarily talked about at the work session. I can certainly add it back if the board prefers it that way. That's just a recommendation. And then the other major change on this document is we added the national organizations now that we're getting multiple people involved in some of our national organizations. And then we get into, I guess we can stop there. Is there any questions on that? So far are we good with taking that strong alignment out? Are we okay with that? Okay. And then kind of the to-do list for me, we went through that, refining the standards-based reporting process. We talked a little bit about that, possibly sending some folks to Chicago to visit what the school's been doing at the high school level for quite some time. Continuing to work improvement on the smarter balanced state assessments. We added the ACT to that since that's the high school assessment. Establishing partnerships on dual credit and job training classes. We just kind of et al. On there because we know that there's a lot more organizations out there. Somebody may come to us in October and say, we want to start this. And also not just limiting it our partnerships to MSUB and City College or Rocky. We already have a partnership that we're going to start pursuing second semester with Gallatin College out of Bozeman for possible future teachers. The activities budget part, we talked quite a bit about that already with Mike, kind of going through some of that process. I think we can expect, we talked about that at the meeting, I think we can expect to see MOA fees go up sometime and then
They already are.
okay. I know there were some questions about Booster Club, and I know Lacey, you had some questions after the fact about what Booster Club does and stuff. So Mike is here if you want to ask any of those questions before we approve this. Future expansion, I just shared you our upcoming high school numbers. We'll continue to work on that with Jeff at the middle school. And you guys talk about possibly looking at the cost of property and what options we have in the future. Continuing the relationship and celebration focus within a discipline structure. I know that was something that the board had talked about. One thing that came up, and Gordon and I forgot, we haven't had a chance to talk about this. We've talked about celebrating the future plans of outgoing classes. So when we get a kid that gets accepted to the University of Montana, let's get a banner up on maybe in the counseling area or for appendix, yeah. Or when kids sign with, or even just a logo up there. If kids sign to join the Carpenters Union, let's get something, just kind of celebrating where all of our kids are going on there and some of those traditions that we talked about the other day getting going. And then this is one that kind of I brought forward, and I think it's something that, you know, coming out of the pandemic, I think we really want to focus on getting better at what we're doing and not adding more to what we're doing. Really dialing in on that LEAP and those 25 items that are on the LEAP in lieu of adding additional initiatives. So any questions for Mike on the Booster Club? And then we'll kind of talk that through, and then if there's something else.
I don't know if I have a specific question. I think I understand the point of the booster club. The confusion when we talked about the goals was that the money came through the school, not separate, right? So booster club would be like a separate organization that can raise funds in obviously having the relationship with someone at the school. And they can't earmark them, right? And so it would be like the booster club wants to create a club and they want to do 50-50 at a football game. They would need to ask permission. Whatever money's raised would go in the booster club fund. And then they could come to you at some point and say, or you could go to them and say, hey, we need money. And that relationship would be fostered, correct?
Exactly how it needs to work. Again, remember, the Booster Club is still school-wide. I only deal with MHSA events, so like FFA, all the other, they can go do that. That would be Gordon's decision on how they use that money within the school system as far as Title IX and everything else, but I'm governing. People think Booster Club is just sports, and it's not, right? It's for the school that they're generating, so that's exactly how they would fundraise. I would either ask them, coach would come to me and say, I need this. I'd say, I don't have the money, let me ask the Booster Club. Booster Club says, yes, we'll earmark that for you. You know, here's your $2,000. And they keep tally on their side, but all I'm doing on my end is keeping Title IX and Ridgeway compliant. And after that, that's where, and the money sits with the Booster Club. And that's exactly how it would run.
Okay, so based on that, I mean, and I understand that entirely, and so as that conversation kind of evolved, I don't feel that it is the responsibility of the school or Tobin to create a booster club. I think a relationship has to happen, and I think, you know, we talked in our policy meeting that the policies need to be followed, bylaws, they need to be approved and all of that. But I'm not comfortable putting it on Tobin's to-do list and or, you know, then down on your list, Mike, to get that up and running. I really feel it belongs in the, I think, Scott, we talked about this, in the community, right? The parents, if they're interested, they need to step up and be guided by the school, but I don't feel that the ownership should lie on the school.
I feel like the working facility is still not guiding enough.
The word facilitate, not guiding enough.
I guess, again, I think this should happen regardless, so I just don't feel.
I may be able to help here, and I talked to Tobin about this too. By law, I can't have anything to do with a booster club being an athletic director. Okay, so yes, I agree that it has to be a community thing. I had one meeting with them and gave them what this would look like, how we would disperse money, how I have to manage it. And it just kind of dissipated from there. They were working on, I know it got sick and working on getting their 503C or whatever it is, right? And they never got around to that. So they've got a long ways to go. I keep putting stuff out and telling people, yes, I just keep adding names, sending it to those people that were interested in it. And it's got to grow in that sense of stuff. I set aside different activities and different 50-50, what they could do and have instant access to money to get a building. That's how I would facilitate them by giving them opportunities in our school of how they can fundraise money, you know, and activities. So, yeah, we have a lot of people that said they want to be a part of it, but 4 people showed up, you know, and that's where it kind of just went and never did go from there. And I do think that they want to be a part of it, but people that are doing it are tired. already and to create this whole thing. And if it wasn't for them, we wouldn't have been able to do a lot more other stuff this last 2 years, with a couple people of that group, so. Yeah, I mean, Booster Club is nice, but Booster Club gets, in my mind, it's a little sticky because they want to be able to use their money each and every way, and I can't do it. I have to say no more than I can say yes. It was just kind of my original.
I mean, I'm okay either way, leaving the wording on there or taking it off entirely. Just because, again, back to, you know, the two organizations or the two, they need to be separate. And so there needs to be a relationship, and I think there needs to be parents who step up and, you know, create that. And obviously with approval and, you know, approval of their bylaws and assigning them a liaison based on a policy and all of that, I think that will gradually happen. I just, again, I think, you know, we want to make sure, I want to make sure that it's not an expectation that Mike or Tobin are leading this, because it should not be led by the school, it should be led by the parents.
Okay, so, would you guys all be comfortable if we change facilitate to support? Because I think I would still like to see these people in our goals, and eventually we want to see that happen.
I don't view that as a primary goal for Tobin at this point. I have no idea how much time you're gonna spend on the first graduating class. I assume it's gonna be a lot, and I would like to see your efforts. Or Gordon, Gordon, that'll work too. But I'd like to see your efforts more focused on the goals that we have, like, you know, SVT, the first graduate class.
There's plenty to do here.
Yeah, I don't think that should be a primary goal.
So you want that to come off of that sheet?
I'd be comfortable with that.
I would be too.
Yeah, I think that's a lot of work we're putting on Tobin. And one more thing to get a booster club going, from what I'm hearing is involved with it, he has to get parents involved and things like that. I don't think we should have that on the goal list.
Wasn't the board approved, I mean, wasn't the Booster Club approved, is that?
Yeah, the booster club is gonna be approved, but we're not placing Tobin as the primary liaison to spearhead it. It's not on his
I
goals
can
for
help
this
Tobin
year.
out, that would be huge, I'm not,
Yeah.
I don't know what Tobin wants to do, but I don't want to be the head of it, or I don't think Tobin, but I will definitely
If
give
you
him every
legally-
opportunity.
If you legally can't be the head of it,
Yes.
I don't want you to
I'm giving
be
them
the head
every
of it.
opportunity that they can to make money, but
But under policy, like the Booster Club or any of those school support organizations have to be approved every single year.
Every year.
oh, every year.
So we need, so the board has to have a list of who their officers are.
Yeah, they're not there yet. We
No.
tried to get them there, they're not there yet.
And what I'm saying is that Tobin's time and resources better spent on more productive.
And we have a framework for them. All they have to do is, this is who the officers are. We want to treat these bylaws. This is when we're gonna meet.
And I will let the person that kind of trying to get it going, know all that, and they can fill that in and bring it back at any time that they get it.
We want to support it, we want to see it grow, we want to see it flourish, but we don't want him to waste his time developing it.
And regard-
I think that Booster Club was truly reflective of like the community support. And so, again, if we're looking at redundancy, it's the focus on relationships and celebrations continue to build spirit and community support. Booster Club falls underneath that, you know, so I think
And just like with the PTA, whether if this is on this list or not, Mike and I are doing everything we can to help facilitate and get a Booster Club up and running based on our own experience and what we can do to help them out. But ultimately, it really does have to be a community group.
And there's vital to our activities. It's really vital.
For long term, like Mike said, it's nice to be able to have, you know, a rainy day fund, you know, all of a sudden we get, you know, 60 girls out for middle school volleyball, and we have to come up with extra uniforms and an extra travel budget, and those type of things. It's nice to be able to lean on a Booster Club for those type of things.
Okay. So could we get a motion that reflects the eliminating that language?
I motion that we remove, facilitate booster club from the Botwood School Board. For COVID.
I'll second that.
So is your motion including to approve the balance of it at the same time?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So there's a motion from Josh and a second.
Lori will make it sound really good, Josh.
To approve the draft board goals without the facilitate booster club involvement. Any comments, questions, further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? And that passes unanimously. Okay, so we need to approve the job descriptions for the administrative and activities that Tobin's got.
Yeah, and I apologize that I didn't have the whole bunch ready to go for just live, but my summer got to go.
Any questions or thanks, Mike, for your.
Thank you, guys.
Appreciate your
Thank
help.
you.
Yeah, thank you.
Any discussion on those job descriptions?
Yes, I didn't know, was there any? Wasn't any to compare it by, so I just didn't know what changes were made. Is there any changes?
Yeah, there was changes to all, that's why they're. So,
Okay.
You just mostly did it, so it wasn't more legal.
yeah, I gave the clean version, based off of, where folks are actually doing, you know, what. So I worked off of Chris's standard ones that we had, and then floated them out to the folks that oversee or are in those positions to see if there's anything. So like, for instance, Darlene gave me some feedback about adding software to some of her stuff, because she actually spends more time on software than she does on hardware at this point. And the current job, the job description that we had was more hardware and training. And now with everything in the cloud, it's all software rather than hardware sometimes. So I didn't give you the I mean, I certainly can send those out if you'd like. If we want to table this, I can certainly send those out and then you can compare them.
I think they're a comprehensive description and the, I think might meet our needs. Okay, any comments from the people? All those in favor?
Aye.
Wait a minute, I didn't get a
What are we in favor of?
Could I get a motion on updating the job descriptions for administrative and activities?
I moved to approve the updated job descriptions for administrative activities.
Thank you so much.
Second.
See, I caught myself at that. Any other comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? And that passes unanimously. On to approving the memorandum of understanding with the Rural Behavioral Health Institute and one with Riverstone Health.
So I brought you some information last spring about the Rural Behavioral Health Institute approached us. They're based out of Livingston, and it's actually a nonprofit that's funded through Arthur Blank. And they've been working with a lot of school districts statewide. And what they offer is a very brief suicide screener that we can give multiple times a year. And they don't even get our student information. Our counselors will have students' ID numbers. And so they will, when the students take the screener, if there is a red flag about a student that maybe has changed some of their behavior or showing some of those red flag behaviors, the counselors will get an email that says, and the principals will get an email that says, your student 532178 may be at risk. And so then they can go ahead and reach out to parents and put some sort of support net in place for those kids. When we met with the counselors last year, we talked about doing it once in the fall and then once in the spring, just an extra tool for mental health to try to prevent any tragedies with our students. And then the second part of that is agreement with Riverstone Health. We've been doing this probably for what, more than 7, 8 years now. It's the in-depth program. So if we have any students that are caught with cigarettes and chew don't even really exist anymore, it's vapes and e-cigarettes. In lieu of suspension, they go to Riverstone and they go through an education program down there about the risks of those type of devices and tobacco. And so it's been effective with some students it hasn't, but it's another tool in our belt to try and educate kids rather than just penalize them for those type of decisions.
I have a question. In the contracts with both of these, is this their contract or is this one you wrote? Is it restricted?
So the one that's with the data with the Rural Health Institute, that is something I worked on with Chris Goss.
Okay.
And then the one with the in-depth is the Riverstone Health one that area districts also.
So it's their contract.
For Riverstone, it's theirs. For
It's yours.
RHI, it's ours.
Okay.
And I think a few years ago, we put the Riverstone one, I think we gave it to an attorney to look at.
We
a few
did.
years ago,
We
just
did.
to make sure it hasn't changed.
Okay.
I make a motion that we approve the memorandum of understanding for the contract.
Okay, Scott. Somebody second. First by Scott and second by Sylvia to approve the MOU for the Rural Behavioral Health Institute and Riverstone Health. Is there any discussion?
I just have a quick question on the one that we created, and I know we talked about this in the policies. So have they seen this contract yet?
Yes.
Okay, so,
Yes.
okay, I just,
No, this is the first time. This one's the first time. But I sent it to her. She's actually stopping by. She's working with Harvick. Stopping by tomorrow and signing the contract. So,
okay, so there won't be any changes on their side that they might.
no, she's already with that.
Perfect.
Now, Friends of the Children, that's a different story.
That's why we don't have to vote on today. Okay.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? And that passes unanimously. Okay. So now we have our policy updates that we need to approve. We have 3 new policies and we have some revised and then some that we're these are what we went over in 26 meeting with Chris. Does anybody have any questions or comments on these policies?
The only question is when there's a motion, you want us to just say policy updates to the 1900, 2000, and 4000 partial series, or do you need them all listed?
So we might want to add 1000s as well too. I just noticed that 1520 doesn't follow the 1900s. This is the second reading of that staff communications. It's not a required policy, so it takes 2 readings.
And we're also deleting 2 1900, so.
Yeah, so, well, those are 1900, so
okay.
they're on there. So if you make a motion to do it as a group, can we add 1000 or even specifically 1520 as a second reading? I can go through any of these policies individually in the conversation that we went on, if anybody wants to.
No, I'm just more like, so now how do I word it?
Don, would you like me to go through each of these individually?
Yeah, please do, and read them verbatim.
We did it last time.
I know.
That was perfect.
Not just any, those.
I loved it.
That's why Don doesn't get to run the July board meeting anymore.
I remember that meeting.
Not allowed to do that.
That was perfect.
Okay, so
I move to approve policy updates 1520, or just policy updates
I would say that's.
as presented.
including the second.
I'll second that.
Thanks, Betty.
God bless you.
Motion by Sylvia with a second by Betty to accept the policy updates as presented, including the second reading of 1520. discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? And that passes unanimously. Okay, so now we need to approve the handbooks. We have employee health, the health safety paraprofessional, special education and substitute.
So other than the health and safety, the employee, paraprofessional, special education substitute handbooks are really just updating phone numbers, names. So like, for instance, Carrie Larson now is doing the substitutes instead of, because of Stacy retiring. So just updating trustee names, those type of things that are just real rudimentary changes, just kind of updating things. The health and safety, we go through and update that continuously as things come up. Anytime we do a drill, we might have feedback, we might tweak and change how we do things. That lives in Google Drive, so that staff has access to it, and Tana still covers that whole process. That's how this year I've asked her, she's going to be assigned more to the elementaries. So I've asked her to be out like at drop off and pick up time, just looking for safety issues, doing around crosswalks, drop off areas, those type of things. Just trying to be proactive with some of those things because of some of the feedback I've received from trustees.
So that document is a living, breathing document.
Yeah, but we should, as a board, you guys should probably approve it every year.
Okay, is there any discussion on any of this updated canvas?
I just had one kind of question, and I'm trying to find exactly the section. I think it was in the second. What? Oh, it was on the staff, I believe it was on the staff one, and it was around, if, let's say, the computer, their computer gets stolen, or we have to, file a claim. I think it said that the staff was responsible for the deductible. Has that ever happened? And I guess I just kind of was a little bit concerned about the, I'm not thinking of the right word, but maybe the morale. I mean, because if somebody gets their house broke into and just what happened, right, with a trustee where their Chromebook got stolen, in the scenario of a teacher getting their Chromebook stolen, and we have to file a claim, should that really fall on the teachers?
I guess there's different scenarios. It would be nice to have that ability. Having it stolen out of your luggage on a trip or your vehicle being broken into is different than leaving it someplace and having it stolen. So I think.
The word may.
Would that?
We should never charge people for it, to my knowledge, Darlene.
No, the one time we did, somebody drove over there.
I was waiting for it.
Jenny got the background on that one.
That's the only time we've ever done that.
Okay.
I replaced the mute screens and then paid for that. Because they dropped it or something.
I mean, maybe the wording is negligent type of, I don't know. I mean, maybe that's, if you're comfortable with that, I don't know, let's see. If it was more negligent, then it would be the responsibility versus if it was stolen, then it's not.
I just,
I don't know.
it's nice to have that option, but we're not gonna pile on somebody if it's a situation out there.
Yeah, no, and I think, like Sylvia said, May probably covers it. It's just, I think it was more on the insurance section where it was pretty specific in the case of a stolen or damaged laptop, iPad or other electronic device. And so kind of just wanted to talk through that and make sure, that it was.
So the second part of that sentence kind of covers that. In general, it is a responsibility of the taxi that covers the. So not saying
Right.
that we will. Or anything like that.
Gotcha. Okay, yeah, I just kind of had a question on that, just, based on recent events that had happened. I want to make sure that, I get what you guys are saying, I just wanted to kind of make sure that we weren't,
And this electronic device agreement, that's MTSD. Correct, it's not an agreement that we have inside.
And you know, maybe what we should do is, I have no idea what the deductible is now. Maybe that's not even accurate. I don't know. Maybe we just say, leave off $1,000 because I don't have a clue.
And I mean, I thought, and that might be good too, just because I felt like $3,000 kind of was like, you know. That was a lot of money in my home.
Well, if it's not $1,000, it's probably not less.
No,
Insurance rates are going up.
yeah, no, exactly. And I mean, I think just, again, I wanted to ask the question about it and, you know, make sure that we felt that it was worded appropriately to cover ourselves, but that we weren't,
But, well, there's nothing in this handbook that's pressing, so we can table this and we can look at some language, Darlene and I and Don, or some language and bring it back with some good language if you like. So if you would want to table the handbook. So
But in light of this discussion, are you comfortable with that then, Lacey? The discussion we just had, are you comfortable with the way it's written?
Okay, so I would just say, just to mirror language, I would say that line 2, instead of saying, it is a responsibility of the faculty member, saying it may be responsibility.
Okay, so we do want to table this and change language.
Yeah.
Yes, please.
And then.
And then we can update the deductible as well.
So in the motion that I'd like you to make, I want you to approve of the updated handbooks of health and safety paraprofessional, special education and substitute. Leave that first one out and we'll table that. Okay? Okay.
I motion to approve the updated handbooks, health and safety, the paraprofessional, special education and substitute handbooks as presented.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thanks, Jamie. I have a first from Lacey and a second from Jamie to approve the handbooks as presented with the employee handbook table. Language is changed.
I'm sorry, who seconded?
I did. Jamie did. Any other discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Good. That's unanimously. So now we need to approve the enrollment of students under exceptional circumstances with an attached list of students under policy 3100 and 3100B. These are early.
Yeah, so these are the 4-year-olds that we're enrolling into kindergarten. If you remember, it's a half-day program and we expanded it from 1 teacher to 2 this year. So we have 48 total slots. Mrs. Fox and her team went through and screened these children. And these 32 fit the bill for being enrolled under exceptional circumstances based on our policy. Mrs. Fox, do you want to touch base on anything more on it?
You know, since we did the screening early this year, we had all 48 full filled. And we had 3 dropouts, so we're gonna take some more in, so we might have 3 more after we screen again.
So we'll have more approvals.
Possibly,
Possibly
if those 3 additional kids meet the qualifications under the policy.
exceptional.
May. So which of those, do you know the initials on those groups?
No, they haven't been screened yet.
Oh,
That would be next time.
I'm talking the 3 that dropped out.
They're not on there.
Oh, okay. Good job. Wait, no. Okay.
I do have a question on these. What are the exceptional circumstances? Like, what are the abbreviations stand for? I know what IP is.
Thank you. I was
It's in
gonna
the
ask
policy
that.
right here, so.
What is it?
Well, the policy, 3100 is right there. If you go through there, it lists what the qualifications are. I'm sorry. Not me.
3100.
Didn't see it there either.
So income eligibility, so F and R would be income eligibility. Limited English proficient, so that'd be LEP. That's a student that doesn't speak English in their home. Gifted and talented, so that'd be GT. enrolled member of a federally recognized American Indian tribe, or is homeless.
And what is that?
We have any homeless on there? Yeah, so there's no homeless on there. So,
And in conjunction with a lot of that, there's IEPs that.
It's usually.
and typically IEP students are enrolled anyway under the special.
Question.
These are not out of district. These are just
No, we don't-
Bless you.
So these kids will end up being in our kindergarten.
Just for those, you two new trustees on the board, she does a fabulous job with those early kids and getting them ready, and it just, they just kind of race through kindergarten now. They have
Makes a
just
huge difference.
miles ahead of other kids starting kindergarten that haven't had. The kids in this area don't tend to get. They're- My parents that are paying for the kids to go to preschool, so they're not as advanced coming into kindergarten. In our school district, there's a lot of other school districts, and so this is a great program, and it's done a great job with it. Starting with our STARS program when we first did it.
Well, we actually have
Or
this
that.
first, then stars, and then the back.
Yeah.
Start
Done
to
it
pay for.
several different ways.
Okay, I move to approve the enrollment of the students under the exceptional circumstances. Thank you, Sylvia. Do you have a second? Thank you, Jamie. We have a first by Sylvia, second by Jamie, to approve the students under exceptional circumstances. Any more comments? Discussion?
So,
Oh, go ahead.
no, I guess I was looking through, I guess prior to the question I had on the budget. I know we had approved the consent agenda on the substituting hires, but I did see, is this who, this staff here, Tobin, is that who we just approved to have for that position?
For the early
Okay.
kindergarten.
No, not early K, sorry, for the middle school director, whatever it is. And the one that we just talked about, is that what we just approved?
I don't
I don't think it presented
believe
that.
so.
It says middle school assistant activities monitor, is that the one we just?
Yeah, so it would be actually.
Okay. So, okay, so he is taking that position? Is that correct?
Yeah, you guys approved it earlier.
We did approve that earlier? Okay.
So we have a motion from Sylvia and a second by Jamie on accepting the enrollment of students under exceptional circumstances. All in favor? All opposed? That passes unanimously.
Move we adjourn.
That is unanimous. We have a second.
I would like to set up to clarify that our next meeting is on the 18th at 4, correct?
Yes. Okay. The expulsion hearing on the Thursday.
So we have a meeting on August 18th at 4 p.m. We will meet in this room and go into executive session. We are adjourned. Thank you, folks.
And then next week, on the 25th, the second set, we'll start at 4:30, so we get classes and kids get out.
You drunk.